Researchers convinced roughly a quarter of study participants that they had been lost in a shopping mall as a child and rescued by a stranger, an event that never happened. Participants not only believed the false memory but elaborated it with vivid, specific sensory details entirely of their own invention. This is the misinformation effect, and it has overturned decades of wrongful convictions built on confident but false eyewitness testimony. Elizabeth Loftus's landmark 1974 experiments showed participants film clips of car accidents, then asked questions using different verbs describing the collision, asking how fast the cars were going when they smashed versus when they merely contacted each other. Participants asked the smashed version reported significantly higher speed estimates and were more likely to falsely report having seen broken glass at the scene when none was actually present in the film. This demonstrated that the precise wording of a question asked after an event can directly alter a witness's subsequent memory of that event. Loftus and Jacqueline Pickrell's Lost in the Mall study provided family members with 3 true childhood stories and 1 entirely fabricated story about being lost in a shopping mall as a child, then asked participants to recall details about all 4 events across several interview sessions. Approximately 25% of participants came to believe the fabricated event had genuinely happened, often adding vivid invented sensory details, the color of a stranger's clothing, specific emotions felt, despite the event never having occurred. This demonstrated that entirely false autobiographical memories can be successfully implanted through suggestion. The misinformation effect is substantially explained by source monitoring errors, failures in the cognitive process of correctly identifying where a specific memory originated. When people repeatedly imagine a suggested event or are exposed to misleading post-event information, the resulting mental representation can become difficult to distinguish from an authentic memory of directly experienced events, since imagined and perceived events share overlapping neural representations. Reality monitoring, a specific form of source monitoring, is particularly relevant to false memory research, since it concerns distinguishing internally generated, imagined, from externally derived, perceived information. Memory reconsolidation research shows that retrieving a memory does not simply access a stable, fixed record. It temporarily renders the memory malleable, requiring the brain to reconsolidate and effectively restore it, during which window new information, including misleading post-event information, can become incorporated into and alter the original memory trace. This provides a specific neurobiological mechanism explaining why exposure to misinformation shortly after retrieving a memory of an event, as happens during repeated police interviews or media coverage, is particularly likely to distort the memory in lasting ways. Decades of eyewitness research demonstrate that a witness's subjective confidence in their memory is only weakly correlated with the memory's actual accuracy, and that confidence itself can be inflated by factors entirely unrelated to accuracy, including repeated questioning, confirming feedback from investigators, and the simple passage of time allowing memories to consolidate into a more coherent, but not necessarily more accurate, narrative. This is a critical concern for juries, who tend to find confident eyewitnesses more credible even though confidence is a poor, unreliable indicator of whether that testimony is actually correct. The Innocence Project's analysis of hundreds of wrongful convictions later overturned through DNA evidence has found that mistaken eyewitness identification was a contributing factor in a substantial majority of these cases, the single largest identified cause of documented wrongful convictions in the United States. This finding, directly informed by decades of Loftus-style memory research, has driven significant reforms in police lineup procedures, including double-blind administration where the administering officer does not know which lineup member is the suspect, and sequential rather than simultaneous presentation of lineup members, both shown to reduce false identifications. The misinformation effect demonstrates that memory is not a video recording faithfully preserved for later playback. It is a reconstructive process, vulnerable to suggestion, that can be genuinely altered after the fact. This finding, translated from the psychology laboratory into courtroom procedure, has directly changed how the justice system handles one of its most historically trusted forms of evidence.